Have you ever felt that something was watching you even when you were alone? I never believed in ghost stories or curses until the night my livestream changed my life forever. It was a chilly October evening when I fired up my computer for what I thought would be another routine stream. My room was my sanctuary, a cramped space in a rundown apartment in suburban Ohio that I'd transformed into a makeshift studio. The walls were plastered with vintage horror movie posters, and my desk was adorned with LED lights that pulsed in slow, hypnotic rhythms. I'd spent years perfecting my setup: dual monitors, a high-quality microphone, and a camera that captured every nuance of my expressions as I played the latest horror games. But on this night, as I settled into my chair and adjusted the camera angle, I felt an inexplicable chill run down my spine. I started the stream with a question I always used to break the ice: do you ever feel like you're not alone even when you're by yourself? The chat exploded with responses, half the viewers claiming they'd felt it too, the other half joking about ghosts in my closet. I chuckled, though my heart was pounding a little faster than usual. At first, everything went normally. I was playing a new indie horror game, and the graphics, grainy, eerie, and unsettling, provided the perfect ambience. I joked with my regular viewers about the game's budget design, but then something peculiar happened. In the midst of a tense in-game moment, I noticed a flicker in the background of my webcam. For just a split second, a dark shape appeared in the far corner of the room, where nothing had been before. I paused the game and rewound the stream, only to see a shadowy figure lingering at the edge of the frame. It wasn't humanly possible. The figure was elongated, as if stretched and distorted, its form merging with the darkness. My fingers trembled as I typed in the chat, "Did anyone see that?" The responses were immediate: "Behind you," and "There's something in your room." My laugh died in my throat. I dismissed it as a camera glitch. I reassured myself that my mind was playing tricks on me in the half-light of my room. After all, horror games and eerie music could easily prime your brain for hallucinations. But deep inside, a nagging feeling told me that something was very, very wrong. I tried to concentrate on the game, but every time I looked at my webcam preview, I swore I could see that same shadow lurking at the edge. The room, once familiar and safe, now felt like a trap. I checked every corner: the bookshelf, the closet, even the empty doorway behind my desk. Nothing seemed out of place, except the fact that the chill persisted, like a silent, icy presence that had seeped into the walls. As the stream progressed, the disturbances escalated. A series of odd sounds began to filter through my headphones. A soft, deliberate tapping that didn't match any in-game effect, a faint whisper that seemed to emanate from nowhere. At first, I blamed it on faulty audio equipment. But the whispers grew clearer, and I started to make out words. My name, spoken in a husky, almost raspy tone. "Mark. Mark," it repeated over and over, as though the very walls were trying to remind me who I was. My heart hammered in my chest. I attempted to calm myself by interacting with the chat, asking if anyone else was hearing it. The responses were a mix of alarm, disbelief, and wild amusement. Some thought it was a clever sound effect that I had forgotten to mention, while others insisted that the voice was unmistakably real. The sensation of being watched was overwhelming. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of fabric, sent shivers along my spine. Then came the moment that shattered all illusions of safety. I was deep into a particularly tense section of the game when I heard a click, like a door latch being released, echo through my room. I froze. The click came from my closet, the one spot in my room I always kept shut and locked. In the flickering glow of my LED lights, I saw that the closet door, which had always been closed, was now ajar. I leaned forward, my breath catching in my throat, and squinted at the dark opening. The beam of my webcam illuminated nothing but inky darkness inside. I tried to stand up to investigate further, but my chair creaked ominously as I shifted, and the chat exploded with frantic messages: "Don't go. Check it out on camera. Something's inside." Reluctantly, I raised my phone to record the closet while I spoke in a hushed tone. "I'm just going to check. Nothing's there," I whispered, my voice quivering despite my attempts to sound calm. I swung the flashlight over the opening. For a brief moment, I saw a shape that looked like a person huddled in the corner. My blood ran cold. I couldn't tell if it was a trick of the light or an actual presence. I snapped a photo and hurriedly closed the closet door. I sat back down, eyes wide, as the room seemed to pulse with a new, sinister energy. The game continued in the background, but it no longer held my attention. My mind was fixated on the idea that something had invaded my safe space. Every shadow seemed to hide a secret, every sound a whispered threat. I tried to speak normally, explaining to my viewers that I'd had to check something, but the words came out halting and rushed. barely concealing my growing terror. I decided to take a short break to collect myself. I switched off the game and dimmed the lights further, hoping to ease the tension. But that only seemed to invite more darkness. As I sat there trying to steady my breathing, the webcam feed flickered again. This time the image warped and distorted, showing a blurred reflection of my room that wasn't quite right. I could see my face, but behind me, a tall, gaunt figure with hollow black eyes lingered. It was as if the entity had somehow merged into the feed. I jerked away from the screen, my heart racing, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I attempted to rationalize what was happening. Maybe a virus had infected my streaming software, maybe someone was playing a twisted prank on me. But every explanation fell apart under the weight of the overwhelming evidence. My computer began to behave erratically, programs crashing, lights flickering in a pattern that felt almost deliberate. The whispers returned, louder this time, echoing in my ears with a familiar haunting cadence. "Mark, you let me in." It was as if the entity knew me, as if it had been waiting for this moment. Desperate to regain control, I tried to end the stream, to shut everything down and escape the nightmare unfolding in real time. But my commands went unheeded. The computer froze, the screen turning an unnerving shade of static gray, and the whispers turned into a low, guttural chant that reverberated through the room. I felt my body stiffen as if frozen in terror, every instinct screaming for me to flee, but my limbs refused to obey. Then came the climax, a moment that shattered the barrier between reality and nightmare. With a sudden burst of static, the screen flashed a single chilling message in bold white letters. "You invited me. Now you're mine." The words glowed ominously as the sound of 1,000 whispered voices filled the room, overlapping with the relentless tapping on my closet door. I could feel the presence closing in, its cold breath on the back of my neck, its skeletal fingers brushing against my shoulder. In that terrifying instant, I knew that this was no malfunction, no trick of the mind, it was a curse come to life. I bolted upright in my chair, the room spinning around me. My heart pounded as I fumbled to shut down the computer, but nothing responded. The entity's voice now boomed from the speakers in a deep, demonic tone. "You cannot escape me, Mark. Your fear has bound you to me." I tried to scream, but my voice was lost in the cacophony of static and whispers. The lights flickered violently, plunging the room into a series of strobe-like flashes that revealed fleeting images of twisted, distorted faces and shadowy figures in every corner. In that moment of absolute terror, my mind began to fracture. I was no longer in control of my body, my senses overwhelmed by the relentless assault of fear. The entity seemed to be everywhere at once, behind me, in the reflections, even in the digital world of my stream. I could feel its presence seeping into my thoughts, corrupting every rational notion of reality. I watched helplessly as the camera feed shifted, showing not only my room but also a montage of horrifying scenes. Dark hallways with no end, decaying figures crawling out of ancient crypts, and a vast, empty void punctuated only by the eerie glow of distant eyes. I was paralyzed, trapped in a nightmare of my own making. For what felt like an eternity, the entity held me captive, feeding on my terror, growing stronger with every second. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the onslaught stopped. The static receded, the whispers faded into silence, and the light steadied into a dim, oppressive glow. I sat there, drenched in sweat, trembling as I tried to collect my scattered thoughts. But the terror was far from over. In the days that followed, my life became a waking nightmare. I could no longer trust the sanctity of my own home. Every creak in the floor, every flicker of the monitor triggered vivid flashbacks of that cursed stream. I became a recluse, barely leaving my apartment, terrified of what might be lurking just out of sight. My once thriving channel went silent, the followers who had witnessed my ordeal now haunted by the memory of that night. I tried to seek help online, scouring forums and obscure websites for any hint of a solution. A ritual, a curse-breaking chant, anything that could sever the unholy bond I'd unwittingly formed with the entity. That's when I stumbled upon an old legend. According to a series of posts on a forgotten corner of the internet, there was a way to banish a shadow guest that had invaded one's life through modern technology. The instructions were cryptic, a mishmash of folklore and digital lore. Face your fear, name the phantom, and cast it out with the strength of your resolve. But do not feed it, do not acknowledge its power. I tried to follow the instructions, holding impromptu rituals in my darkened living room, speaking words I barely understood, and demanding that the entity leave me in peace. At first it seemed to work. For a brief period, the hauntings subsided, and I began to think I might have freed myself of the curse. But freedom was an illusion. One bleak evening, as I sat in the silence of my apartment trying to rebuild some semblance of normalcy, a new notification popped up on my phone. It was a video, an unlisted live stream link from an account I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I clicked it. The video was short, almost too brief to be real, a black screen with a single line of text that read, "I have returned." The moment I saw it, a cold dread overtook me. I knew that the entity wasn't gone. It had only been lying dormant, waiting for me to lower my guard. That night, sleep was a distant memory. Every sound was amplified. The hum of the refrigerator, the rustle of wind against the window, the distant creak of a loose floorboard. I couldn't escape the feeling that something was coming for me. I'd start to doze off only to be jolted awake by a whisper in my ear, or the sensation of icy fingers brushing against my skin. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just residual fear from the live stream, but deep down, I knew that the curse was far from over. In a desperate bid for closure, I decided to confront the entity once and for all. I set up my camera, determined to document the final showdown on my next stream. I called it The Last Broadcast, and announced it to my few remaining followers as an attempt to break the curse publicly. I even invited a few friends to join me in person, hoping that their presence would ward off the spectral intruder. But as the night of the broadcast approached, an overwhelming sense of foreboding consumed me. I wasn't sure if I was about to exorcise a malevolent force or merely unleash it further into the digital realm. The night of the broadcast arrived, and I sat before the camera with a heavy heart and trembling hands. I explained everything to my audience, every strange occurrence, every whispered threat. I pleaded with them to understand that this wasn't just an elaborate hoax or a technical glitch. I spoke about the legend I'd uncovered, the ritual that was supposed to banish the entity, and the desperate hope that I could reclaim my life. My voice was steady despite the tremors I felt inside, and I maintained eye contact with the camera as if daring the entity to reveal itself. Halfway through the broadcast, as I began the ritual by reciting the forbidden words, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The lights dimmed further, and an unnatural silence fell over the space. Then, without warning, the camera feed began to distort. The image of my room melted into a swirl of darkness and static, and in that chaos the entity emerged. It was taller than ever, its form more defined, and its eyes, if they could be called eyes, glowed with an unholy light. The screen filled with its presence as it stepped forward, its voice a deep, resonant growl that vibrated through my very soul. "You invited me. You cannot banish me." My friends in the room gasped and tried to intervene, but the power in the apartment flickered violently, as if the entity was feeding off our fear. I felt the grip of terror tighten around me, my limbs growing numb, my heart pounding as if it might shatter. I continued the ritual, my voice barely audible over the thunder of my own heartbeat, insisting that I would not let this creature control me. I repeated the words with all the strength I could muster. "I deny you. I cast you out. You have no power here." I dared not flinch, even as the room seemed to bend and twist around me, the walls oozing with a darkness that defied description. For what felt like an eternity, the battle of wills raged in that cramped space. The entity's image wavered, its form distorting as if caught in a violent storm of static and light. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the entity let out one final ear-splitting shriek and began to dissolve into a mist that evaporated into the corners of the room. The lights steadied, the camera returned to normal, and a heavy, oppressive silence fell. I was alone again, shaken to my core, uncertain if I had truly won. In the aftermath, I tried to rebuild my life. I attempted to resume streaming, to recapture the connection with my audience, but every time I looked at my computer, I saw the lingering echoes of that night, a shadow that lingered in the background, a whisper that refused to be silenced. The cursed file that once plagued my desktop was gone, but the memories of the entity's presence haunted me still. Even now, months later, I live in a state of uneasy vigilance. I've abandoned late-night streams and locked every door in my apartment. Sometimes, when I'm alone in the dark, I swear I hear that familiar raspy voice saying my name. I can't shake the feeling that the entity is waiting, waiting for me to slip, for me to forget the terror of that night. I know that the curse could return at any moment, lurking behind the digital veil, ready to invade my life again. I share this story not just to recount my own horror, but to warn anyone who might be tempted by the thrill of a cursed livestream. In this age of technology and constant connectivity, you never know what might be lurking just beyond the screen. What if, by tuning in, you too invited something into your life that you could never truly banish? Have you ever experienced something inexplicable during a livestream? What if your screen isn't just a window, but a door to something far more sinister? Let me know in the comments, if you dare.